Why doesn't the United States have 45 viable political parties like most other countries? Because almost all of our political contests are winner-take-all. Smaller parties don't really have a chance to get off the ground, since casting a vote for a smaller party is functionally the same as voting for the party that you don't want to be in office. Because first-past-the-post voting systems, without external influence, will almost always devolve into two dominant parties. CGP Grey did a nice video on this. Our election system isn't set up to handle it. First past the post. Each voter gets only one vote and can only vote for a single candidate. And the candidate with the most votes wins. Naturally results in the formation of two dominant parties. As described by Duverger's law, there are a handful of states moving to adopt ranked choice voting. But they're a small minority among a sea of FPTP. Math. The election system with "the winner takes it all" leads to this phenomenon. But I'm sure others will be able to explain this better. Everyone blaming first past the post, but then other countries with a first past the post system have multiple parties. The real reason is the Electoral College. In this system, each state is given a set number of electors, or electoral votes, which they can give to a candidate based on the results of the election. In some states it's winner takes all, and in other states it's proportional. The total votes needed to win is 270. The maximum votes you can get is 538. Reagan won 535 votes, being the most winningest president of all time. So now take that number and divide it by 2. The number you get is 269. Meaning that in order to win you have to get one more than half. In any kind of scenario where you take this system and start dividing it between a growing number of parties, it becomes impossible to crown a single president unless one party has 51% of all votes. Because this is such a tight race, absolutely any attempt at forming a third party in the US is perceived as an attempt to spoil the election and undercut democracy. Without Ross Perot siphoning Republican votes, George H.W. Bush might have won. Instead, Ross Perot took 18% of the total vote without getting a single elector. Perot spoiled again in 1996 and was shamed to make sure he never tried ever again. Similarly, in 2000, Al Gore lost by just 1,000 votes. And there sits Ralph Nader with 2.8 million votes. Congress and Senate are different. There are some people who sit as independents or third party, like Libertarian Party member Justin Amash. But for the most part these people will caucus with a bigger party because they want power. A lot of the counties you're probably thinking of have parliaments. Multiple parties work great under that system. If it's just winner take all, then two parties is the natural result. The U.S. Constitution requires that to win the presidency, you must have a majority of all electoral votes cast. This pretty much means there will always be two parties that are competitive in presidential races. Because if there were three, we'd almost never have a majority. And Congress would have to pick our president. And nobody wants that. So, our political parties have organized themselves around this structural truth. If there is a strong third party, then one or both of the two major parties absolutely will adjust their platforms to attract those voters. It is in both parties' best interest to have the least amount of parties possible. Our political system can't handle 3 parties, much less than 56. Primarily, Citizens United and lack of ranked choice voting. It has to do with the way our elections work. The president is selected by general election, rather than being chosen by a parliament. As a result, any third party risks siphoning votes away from the most similar of the two candidates to them. People don't want to tank the major candidate they align with more by voting for a third party candidate that won't win, so in the end, everyone consolidates around two opposing candidates. First past the post ensures we only have two parties. Unlimited spending by corporate interests ensures both parties serve the same masters, which is exactly how they want it. We live in an oligarchy, not a democracy. The two chosen parties are sponsored by the banks, and debates are carefully guarded by government troops that arrest and detain dissenting parties. Candidates. The threat of the other party keeps most people making apologies for their chosen lesser evil. Probably less confusing to the lobbyists when they have to pay people off. The system we use. Most countries with a multi-party system operate under a parliamentary system, with multi-member districts and/or proportional representation. These two things essentially mean that people vote for a list of candidates from the party they prefer, and the percent of the votes the party gets translates to a roughly equal percent of seats in Parliament. The U.S. operates under a presidential system, and usually has single-member districts. This, combined with the Electoral College being winner-take-all, pushes electoral politics into favoring two major parties. The U.S. system pushes politics into parties in a number of ways. First, the Electoral College is set up so that if a person gets a plurality of votes in a state, they get all of the state's electoral votes. Importantly, a candidate can only become president if they get 50% plus one electoral votes. These two facts combined mean that it is only mathematically viable for two roughly equal parties to compete for the presidency and have a chance of winning a majority of electoral votes. Another factor is in the U.S. often having single-member districts, in which one candidate who wins a majority vote wins the seat in the House. This pushes the two-party system in the same way the EC does. The parties will never actively change any of this, because it helps maintain their power. These factors also mean that if a viable third party ever arises, it is either absorbed into or replaces one of the main parties. 'Cause the megacorps that own America like it that way. Dollar, 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 dollar. The Electoral College system does not allow for it. In my analysis, if there were several parties, it could result in no party having a clear majority in the Electoral College. In that case, the Constitution allows the House of Representatives to choose the winner. I'd like to see the Electoral College eliminated and shift to a parliamentary system. Unless the Democrats can have super majorities in the Senate, House, and state houses, that won't ever happen. The EC benefits the Republican Party, so there's no way we could get them to approve an amendment to the Constitution regarding the EC. A state like California could try a system like proportional representation in their state assemblies tomorrow. Or Texas could too, for that matter. They absolutely will not, because the dominant political parties there have figured out having near absolute power is far better than sharing power in a coalition. If there were three equal strength parties, none of them would be able to earn the 270 electoral votes needed to win the presidency. It's designed to have two parties and a dustbin, or whatever, for the 2% of independent voters.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.